What's going on, everybody? Welcome, everybody, to the Lakers Outsiders podcast. Gary Kessler here with you, as always, joined by just two people today. I think the last podcast we had about 5 or 6. But joining me today is Grant Goldberg, who is also now a part of Silver Screen and Roll. Grant, congratulations. How's that going for you so far?
Thank you. I'm just happy to have a larger platform to shoot my shot on, and we'll see what happens from here.
Shoot Your Shot 2017, right? Also joining us is a recent college grad, Hani Ahmadian. Hani, how's it feel to have that degree?
Not as cool as being able to shoot my shot on the Silver Screen and Roll account.
That's for you, Harrison Fagan. I feel so bad right now because the only thing I accomplished recently is I finally got to sleep in today. So I mean that was pretty cool. But
small victories.
Gotta appreciate the little things in life. But
hey man, I take that over a degree any day.
The Lakers have accomplished plenty recently. Their off season is off to a pretty damn good start, if I must say so myself. But earlier this week on Tuesday, the Lakers entered the 2017 NBA Draft Lottery in the same kind of situation they've been in the last couple of years with their protected first-round picks because of the Steve Nash trade of 2012. It's pretty wild. We're here 5 years later, and that trade's still kind of playing an effect on the franchise, and it's going to next year. But the Lakers got really lucky. They not only stayed in the top 3, they moved up to the number 2 pick, which I think honestly should just go to the Lakers every year at this point, now that they've had it 3 straight years. The Celtics landed the number 1 pick. The Lakers jumped up to number 2. And the Sixers got the 3rd pick by virtue of swapping with the Sacramento Kings. So guys, let's talk lottery night. I mean, Grant, how nervous were you? I was actually pretty calm this time around. Last year was a different story, but I mean, what's it like for you seeing that order kind of be revealed and they go like pick by pick?
Well, the whole time I was thinking, you have no reason to be nervous. We're probably going to lose the pick. We've gotten it 2 years in a row. This is the year that the luck runs out. So I was trying to calm myself down the whole day. And then as we got closer and closer to 5:30, and I thought it originally started at 5, which made me even more nervous. I just got a pit in my chest, and I just started pacing. And then I tried to sit down and watch the order come out. And as soon as Sacramento jumped into the top 3, I was like, oh, no, it's over for us. And so I just watched nervously. And then when Phoenix got announced as the 4th overall pick, I jumped up and I screamed. I scared my dog, I think. I high-fived my little brother, and it was all happy from there.
Yeah, Hani, I don't know if you were like me. I mean, I always have the draft order pulled up like on my laptop so I can kind of follow along and see like as soon as somebody jumps up. And Grant, like you, like when we found out that Sacramento jumped from I think 8th all the way into the top 3, even though Philly could pick swap with them. I thought the worst. I was like, oh great, like the 8th, the 8th place team already jumped up. We're in trouble. But because of that pick swap, I was kind of trying to figure everything out. Like it was a little confusing. Hani, I mean, what was it like for you? I mean, I was confused, but I think that kind of helped calm me down a little bit because I was sitting there trying to figure everything out, kind of like Joel Embiid was. But what were your nerves kind of like on that night?
I went into it pretty calm, like you were, but once they started calling out the names, and again when Sacramento got called, it got pretty nerve-wracking. Like my heart was beating way too fast for a 21-year-old person. But yeah, that was pretty wild. And I went into it with the expectation that we wouldn't keep the pick just because not great odds, but I wasn't quite as vocal as Grant in real life, but if you look through my Twitter feed, there's a pretty big roller coaster of emotional and very vulgar tweets about the pick that I should probably delete at some point.
I was on the Lakers Outsiders account, and there was a lot of I mean, caps lock was on for a little while there. I honestly I had pretty much the same reaction I did in the NFL draft because the Titans drafted Corey Davis and that was the guy I wanted. It was like the same reaction, so I gotta mix it up. But no, it was. I mean, it was just amazing. Honestly, after the lottery was over, I kind of sat back and was like, I just laughed. I laughed at how lucky this team has been because when you think about it, the Lakers the last 3 years have had more luck than some franchises have ever had, you know, that are repeatedly in the lottery. Like Sacramento, I think this was the first time they ever moved up and Philly could take their pick. Like they could swap their pick. I mean, they moved up from 8th to 5th, which is good for them, but that kind of just, you know, signifies what it's like to be a Kings fan, I think. But no, it was a great night. It was exciting. And I can't imagine what Magic was going through sitting there waiting for it. But let's talk number 2 pick. All right. So the consensus, I think this draft is a lot like last year's draft in the fact that I think the top 2 were pretty. It's kind of a consensus top 2 like last year was. Although there's certainly not the drop off that last year had. Grant, I mean, we're assuming Markelle Fultz probably goes number 1 to the Celtics. I mean, is it just as simple as taking Lonzo Ball for the Lakers if you're the GM of the franchise?
If I was the GM of the franchise, I don't think I'd have the same luck. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty clear-cut decision. I mean, Josh Jackson obviously makes you think. You know, you can have a lot of defensive potential with that lineup with Brandon Ingram next to him. But as far as fits go, you know, Lonzo could just be perfect next to D'Angelo Russell and operate in transition in Luke's offense. So that's the name I'd go with. I know Hani's going to go with Cameron Oliver, but I mean that's known at this point.
You know me so well.
Yeah, no, it's pretty wild that it is pretty consensus right now. I mean, how sure are we that Boston goes with Fultz number 1? I mean, if I had to put a percentage on it, I'd probably put it at about 85% right now. Hani, do you think that's about right, or is that too low?
I think it might actually be too low. Everything that we've heard about Boston, like I'm pretty sure right after draft night, Danny Ainge said they wanted somebody who can create his own shot and create for others, and that just kind of sounds more like Fultz than it does Lonzo, as far as I know. Like I haven't really studied these guys too much, but as far as I know, Fultz is kind of the better shot creator for himself than Ball is. So like it just sounds like that's who they're pretty much set on.
I think 85 is the margin that they lost by tonight.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, no. Shout out to LeBron. I mean, I know a lot of Laker fans hate him, but man, that was beautiful tonight. That was just beautiful. No, I mean, I'd be pretty surprised if Fultz isn't the number 1 pick. To me, it's I mentioned last year's draft, but 2 years ago, like everybody was kind of convinced, like you've got to go Karl Anthony Towns number 1, and for good reason. I feel like that's kind of the same thing with Markelle Fultz. Like if you have the opportunity to pick him, you just got to take him. You know, he may not be like for the Lakers. I think Lonzo Ball is probably a better fit for what they need, but I think Markelle Fultz is probably a more talented player, and you know he's younger. I think he's got probably just more upside in general, and you know, but I really would be. I'd be very surprised if he's on the board at number 2. But Grant, talk about Lonzo Ball. You mentioned kind of, you know, his offensive abilities and things like that. How exactly do you see him fitting in? Like, what are some of the things that you think he can really add to this team?
Well, right away he takes, you don't have to shoulder the load on one player running the offense. So, you can take the ball out of D'Angelo's hands and you can have D'Angelo take the ball out of Lonzo's hands. So not one player is going to have to run the offense by himself. And even Brandon Ingram can, run some point at times. So, you can get D'Angelo more focused on, looking for a shot or playmaking. And then, same goes for Lonzo. And then, like I said, in transition, he's as good as anybody in this draft, probably the best player. So you can have him, distributing. You can have him, running, going up for alley oops. I mean, and as far as defensively, he's more of a project. But I'm saying who isn't on the Lakers at this point in their careers.
Right.
So everybody has a clean slate. So it's all about learning and kind of coming together and gelling as a group. So I wouldn't put too much thought into what he can bring defensively, because that they're starting from the first block on that one.
Well, and I think we've learned here lately, even not with just the Lakers, but a team like the Timberwolves last year, that it's hard for young players to play defense in the NBA. That's something that takes a little while to kind of figure out, both individually and collectively. The Timberwolves have a great defensive coach in Tom Thibodeau, a guy that's going to be a great rim protector in Karl Anthony Towns, and then guys like Andrew Wiggins, who are should be good perimeter defenders. I mean, I think he already is, but but defensively as a team, they struggled a lot last year. So, it's going to take young players time. So I think, and the Lakers have to work on their team defense, I think, a lot too. So, but Hani, a big thing with Lonzo Ball that a lot of people seem to like is he kind of has what people label as a winning mentality or a winning attitude, winning character. And that certainly kind of showed at UCLA this year. They went from, I think they were under 500 2 years ago, to being one of the best teams in the country. How much do you buy into that? And do you think that could play, a role in this team and kind of helping build the culture that they're trying to build?
I mean, track record-wise, like you said, it kind of speaks for itself at UCLA. But also, I think it's kind of the style of play when you have a guy like him that likes distributing the ball and does a lot of his work by just passing it to his teammates and getting them good shots. I think that kind of just improves team chemistry and makes people buy into whatever he says from a leadership perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The Lakers are pretty lucky to kind of have D'Angelo Russell that's almost the same. I think he looks for a shot a little bit more, but he's kind of a similar sort of passer and seems to kind of enjoy that role. Julius Randle is improving and doing the same thing. So I think Lakers have plenty of those guys. And aside from the fact that it is really good on the basketball court because it just gives you a lot of options, it's also good from like a chemistry, team locker room, that sort of perspective too.
Yeah. Hani, how worried about his shot form are you in the NBA?
That's the one thing from limited stuff that I've looked at. The one thing that I'm both worried about and also kind of don't know what to feel about it, because his numbers are really good. Mm-hmm. He shot the ball really well. He was a good 3-point shooter. I think the biggest issue is that he's not a very good mid-range shooter. So as a guy running pick and rolls all the time,
right, that
might be an issue in the NBA where you can't kind of use that mid-range sort of jumper when teams are giving him that.
Right, and that's a minor concern. I mean, I don't know if it's minor or if it's major or whatever, but UCLA didn't run a lot of pick and roll action in their offense. It was a lot of up tempo, and as far as what I've seen, it was just kind of a lot of motion offense and stuff like that. So in this offense, there's going to be a lot of pick and roll. So that's going to be something that he's going to have to work on. But I think it's something he can be good at because I think he's an excellent decision maker. There are times he gets a little lackadaisical with the ball, but I think ultimately he is a good decision maker, and I think he can become a good pick and roll player. But that's where the shot form kind of concerns me the most. Like you said, the mid-range game, especially when he's driving to his right, because when he goes left, he brings the ball to his left side. So it's bringing it away from the defender. He's very good at that little step back move when he goes to his left, but when he goes to his right, I mean, he's got to bring that ball all the way across his body. And if a defender's on his left hip, there's no way for him to get that off. So, that's where I have concerns, is kind of the in-between game, the mid-range game, and, how that might affect him. Learning to consistently hit floaters, I think, is going to be big for him. I've seen some film where he's made some, but it's going to have to probably be a little more consistent in his game. And D'Angelo Russell's the same way. Although he kind of has the floater, he's just got to start making it more consistently. So I mean, we'll see with that. But Grant, what are your concerns right now? Is it just the shot? Is it? I mean, well, we're going to save LeVar Ball for another podcast. But I mean, what concerns do you have right now with Lonzo's game?
Wait, before you go on, when you say we're saving LeVar Ball for another podcast, did you just break news that he's joining us for one, or
right? The Lakers Outsiders podcast between LeVar Ball.
No,
sponsored by the big.
We're not big ballers, so he won't come on our podcast. Grant, what concerns do you have about Lonzo Ball's game right now?
Whether he'll be able to slip and slide on the court in the ZO2s. No. Like you said, the shot form's a little worrying, but it's something that I think that I'll have to see how he plays with in the summer league and in the preseason to really form an opinion on, because you haven't seen it at an NBA level yet.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, I'd like to see him more in the pick and roll. I think that he'd be pretty good distributing the ball out of that kind of set. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not too worried about defensive issues, because I know every young player is going to have them, no matter how highly they're touted. Brandon Ingram struggled as much as anybody coming out, and he was touted as one of the premier defenders in the draft. So I'm not going to carry too much weight with that. And just like you said, the shot, you got to see it happen, and want to see him in the offense, how he works with D'Angelo, how he works with Randall in transition. I think that'd be pretty fun to watch.
And a big thing for me with Lonzo is that UCLA, they had big guys that could stretch the floor. They could create some space, which is hard to do in the college game. When you watch the NBA and then you go watch the college game, I mean, college teams can play zone and really pack the paint and stuff like that, but the spacing is just really different in college. And UCLA had big guys that could stretch the floor, which was good. I mean, Hani, how many of Larry Nance Jr., Julius Randle, and Ivica Zubac, do they need all three to really develop that outside jumper, or is it one? Is it two? I mean, what's your take on that?
I think even one is fine. And you can kind of see it coming with Randall. Not a whole lot. He didn't shoot it well last year, but towards the end of the year, he was taking them more confidently. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Nance. He was taking more of them. You don't necessarily. You can either get two of them to be just mediocre, being able to hit it every once in a while,
just respect,
or one of them, yeah, or one of them being pretty solid, and that should be enough. Because all you need is just one guy that can space out the floor and give room to the other guy to work in the paint. And other than that, you don't really need a whole lot.
Yeah, no. Getting those guys to be able to stretch out the floor, that's big. And Zubac and Larry Nance Jr. were both on Spectrum Sportsnet doing an interview the other day, because they were back in the gym and working. And Nance and Zubac are kind of battling each other in a little 3-point competition they got going. So they're working pretty extensively on adding that to their games. And that's going to be important. That's definitely going to be important to create as much spacing as they can, especially, for guys to create. And I think that's what I'm excited about with Lonzo, if he is the pick, is that you put him next to D'Angelo Russell, and that's your starting backcourt with Ingram, moving forward with Ingram, Randall, and we'll say Zubac, for example. With Lonzo, you're adding a guy that, and everybody kind of gets caught up, I think, in, oh, you're the number 2 pick, you've got to be a star, you got to be a superstar, right? And with Lonzo, I don't think he has to be that, and I don't think he's that type of player. I don't think he's the type of guy that wants to necessarily take over a game. Because there were times that watching him at UCLA this year where I thought maybe he should, take over a game, and there were times he did in stretches. But he's a very unselfish player, and the Lakers, I mean, quite frankly, the Lakers need guys like that. Especially at that guard position next to D'Angelo Russell. I think Russell's going to handle the ball still a lot. But I think having a playmaker and a shooter, because, I mean, as much as people talk about Lonzo Ball's shot form, he was crazy efficient as a freshman at UCLA. Looking at his numbers right now, like his true shooting percentage was 67.3. That is absolutely absurd. And he shot 55% from the floor overall, 41.2% from three. His free throw percentage was 67.3, but he only got there about 2 times a game, which that's kind of one, I guess, something I'd like to see him do a little bit better. But
and that's where his shot is kind of concerning to me, because Ingram coming in was supposed to be a good 3-point shooter too, and his free throw percentage wasn't great. And then in the NBA, you kind of saw his 3-point shooting go down. Now, that might be like a strength issue with him, so it might be completely different, but it's just kind of like when you get guys that aren't good free throw shooters, it kind of tends to correlate to not being good 3-point shooters in the NBA.
Right. I mean, he shot 98 free throws this year. I mean, do you think that's kind of a result of a smaller sample size, or do you think like that's kind
definitely could be? It's not a lot, but you can make the same case for the 3-point shooting too. It's not a whole lot, and there's a lot of variance that comes with it, even in the NBA. So
this is why I come to you. You're supposed to be the math genius. Like I expect concrete answers.
Now. I have a professional opinion.
Just too much speculation.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's definitely a concern, because I think Ingram shot 41% in college as well, in his 1 year at university that shall not be named. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a concern, because there's a like you said, Hani, there's a relatively strong correlation, I think, with a lot of guys that when they can't make free throws, it's hard for them to hit NBA threes. Although with Lonzo, I will say his range is ridiculous. Like he hit some shots from 7, 8, 9 feet behind the college 3-point line this year, and some of them were contested. So he's definitely got range, and that's really good. So we'll see. But another guy the Lakers could pick, we mentioned him a little bit earlier, Josh Jackson. Grant, I think I'm a big fan of Josh Jackson. I don't know if he necessarily should be the pick at number 2. What do you like about his game?
Well, I just like how, what he brings on the defensive floor over everything. He would give us so much more flexibility, and you can shift around players a little more, and you can switch off players with Ingram, Jackson, and Nance if you put him at the 5 or the 4, and just his versatility. And his shot started to come along towards the end of the year, and I don't know how much to trust it, because it's even a smaller sample size than Lonzo's shot.
Yeah, and
that shot form isn't pretty in itself. So, just defensively, I love him as a prospect.
Yeah, and he's another one of those guys that when you look at his 3-point percentage, it's not bad. It's 37.8%. So you look at that. He shot 2.6 threes per game. Really seemed to get better as the season went along. I think at the start of the season, he had a pretty big hitch in his jumper. And that seemed to kind of – I feel like it's still there a little bit, but it's a lot smoother than it was. But at the same time, he shot 56.6% from the free throw line, and he got there 5 times a game. So that's a much bigger sample size than Lonzo Ball.
It's the opposite. Lonzo shot a lot of threes, not a lot of free throws, and then the other way around with Jackson.
Right. Yeah, Jackson shot just 2.6 threes per game, and Lonzo shot 5.4. So, yeah, no, it's. I mean, both of them, I guess, have their own concerns with their jump shot, but you just never know. Like Anthony Brown, if Dylan Heiser is listening to this, I'm sorry, but Anthony Brown was a guy that was a great shooter in college. And then when he got to the NBA, all of a sudden it was like something out of Space Jam. Like he just completely lost his shooting ability. Solid defender, but if you can't make shots, it limits so much, what you can do. But Hani, I mean, I don't know how much you've studied Jackson, but what are some of your initial thoughts? Maybe how he would fit with this group.
Fit wise, he'd be great. Actually, this kind of goes back to Lonzo too. I think the two biggest needs the Lakers have, or two of the three biggest needs, are one, another playmaker next to Russell, so that he doesn't have to be the only guy, and then the other one is a 3-and-D player.
Yeah.
And then, like you guys said, we don't know how much we can trust Jackson's 3-point shot, but
Right.
he has the potential to be a good 3-and-D player. But then next to Ingram, and if Ingram develops like we expect him to also be kind of a good 3-and-D player with maybe a little bit more offensive skill, then you got some crazy good versatility on the defensive end, and hopefully a chance to actually be better than you have been over the past 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Grant, do you think Josh Jackson's more of a small forward shooting guard combo, or do you think he's more of a 3-4 combo?
Right now, I think he's more of a shooting guard, small forward combo, because he still has to mature and develop, and maybe down the line, like Ingram, he can start to transition to the 4 and guard those bigger players, because they're. I mean, he's one of the older prospects in the top 10, but he still has to mature and his body still has to develop more. So in order to go up against those legit older men in the NBA, he's gonna have to grow into his body a little bit more.
Yeah, and hopefully he learned from a rookie today that you don't taunt LeBron James. Like, I don't care if you're a good defender or not, just you don't incentivize LeBron James at all. Okay,
he's just a regular dude, man.
I mean,
they tie their shoes the same way.
That guy ties his shoes in a completely unique way. Like, we found that out today. So
he drinks Sprite like the rest of us,
but he won't tell you to drink Sprite.
Right.
There's a big difference there. But I actually see Jackson as more of a 3-4 combo right now. I guess with that question, it depends on how much you believe in his shot, how much you believe in his 3-point shooting. And I guess for me, I'm just not a huge believer in it right now. I think it's something that could certainly develop because, like I said, I think his mechanics improved over the season. But I don't know. I'm just not a big believer in it right now. Like you said, like you were saying, Hani, the Lakers have 3 needs right now. They need shooters, they need playmakers, guys that can create, and defenders. So if you're a believer in his shot, I mean, really, he checks off all 3 of those boxes because he's a good playmaker. He's an excellent passer, can break down a defense and set up other guys. Was an excellent defender. And then the shot, that's up for debate. So for me, Lonzo and Josh Jackson check off 2 of the 3 boxes, which is good. They check off different ones. I think they're both creators, which is something the Lakers certainly need. But yeah, we got a whole month to debate this. The draft isn't until June 22nd. There's going to be a lot of I'm diving more into the film. I know you guys are too, and we'll have plenty of draft content up on the site, and hopefully by then we actually have a decision. So but I'm just glad that we actually get to talk about this and not, who should we pick at number 28?
Cameron Oliver. Definitely for that one.
I shouldn't have said anything about that pick, but anyways, let's talk about the number 28 pick. And by let's, I mean me and Grant, because we already know who Hani wants, and he's not going to change his mind on that. I actually hope Cameron Oliver gets picked number 27 overall, just to see Hani's reaction.
Wow.
Just wants to get that money.
Grant, I don't know how much you've looked into kind of those borderline first and second round guys, but are there any players that kind of jump out as some guys you'd like to see the Lakers take a look at with that number 28 pick?
I think Dillon Brooks had a really nice tournament. He really caught some eyes. Josh Hart's been a popular name in Lakers Twitter, but apart from those 2, haven't really studied many people around that range. I'm hoping the Brooklyn Nets have, because they're going to get that pick in Luol Deng.
That's a discussion for another podcast too. Trying to unload bad contracts. Personally, I mean, there's a number of guys, and I think in that range, it seems like kind of how mock drafts tend to break down. There's not a lot of wing options in that range, unless you want to, I guess, it'd be considered a reach to go for certain guys that are projected mid to late second round. It's a lot of power forwards and centers. And I've got one guy, obviously, and I'm biased as a North Carolina Tar Heel fan, but I really like Tony Bradley. If you guys, want to watch his film, he's a guy that he's very long. He's 6'10", but he's got a 7'5" wingspan. And I think he was relatively, he was held back a little bit playing at North Carolina this year. He was kind of sort of their sixth or seventh man. But because they had Kennedy Meeks, they had Isaiah Hicks, they had, two seniors that were good, good big guys. He was kind of held back a little bit. I think he has the potential to be a very good rim protector, a good defender. He's got very good hands. He's got a pretty good foundational skill set, and he's only 19 years old. So that's a guy I would like to look at with that pick. He's kind of in that range. I don't know if he's going to stay in the draft or not. The deadline for that's May 24th, but another guy to keep an eye on. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about that pick as well. It's a little more unclear because you just don't know the 27 picks, as opposed to the number 2 pick. We kind of know who's going to go number 1 at this point. But Grant, you mentioned the possibility of trading that pick to a team like Brooklyn to pair it with one of their bad contracts, whether it's Luol Deng or Timofey Mozgov. They're going to try and clear up space somehow. They could obviously stretch those contracts too, but they're trying to save as much cap space as they can for 2018. Magic Johnson has openly stated that. There's a certain player that's gathered a lot of buzz that'll be a free agent in 2018, and that's obviously Paul George of the Indiana Pacers. Hani, I was thinking about this the other day when there seemed to be just report after report about Paul George and his desire to play for the Lakers and come back to Los Angeles, where he's from. A lot of free agents or soon to be free agents get linked to the Lakers in some way. Have you ever seen a player like this get linked to a team so heavily when they have a full year left to play with their current team?
No, I really don't think so, because it's a combination of things. It's a lot of reports from a lot of different sources, or at least a lot of different reporters. It's very mutual. Like, the Lakers have been very close to tampering by saying that we want Paul George.
Magic straight up should have gotten fined for tampering. Like, he basically should have just held up a sign that said, "Paul George, come to the Lakers." I don't know how he didn't get fined for that.
Hey man, he's Magic. He used to be an employee of the team and tweet about everybody that the Lakers should sign, and he got away with it. So, and then the other thing is Paul George and his camp haven't really denied anything either, whether it be public or by leaking out any other things, or just saying that, hey, I'm kind of focused on the Pacers right now. He hasn't really done that. He hasn't explicitly said that he wants to play for the Lakers, but just the fact that he hasn't denied it also kind of makes it seem a lot more legitimate than any other report that we've heard about other players.
Yeah, Grant, that's what stood out to me when he was on Jimmy Kimmel the other day or last week or whenever it was. Obviously, Jimmy Kimmel was very open, and he can tell Paul George to come to the Lakers all he wants. And I'm sure Magic probably gave him a little nudge when he was there, like, hey, get Paul George on the show and tell him to come to the Lakers. But you saw his appearance on Jimmy Kimmel, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, what did you think of that? Because I thought it was really interesting that he was very, obviously he's going to kind of laugh along with it, but he didn't really. Usually a player in that scenario is like very openly says like, oh, I'm happy in my situation, blah, blah, blah. He didn't seem to really do that. Do you think that means something?
Oh yeah, the less he said was really the more he said. It just question after question, or really statement after statement of Kimmel pressuring him to come to the Lakers. He would laugh, but he would never, shut down that talk. And at one point, Kimmel mentioned the possibility of him playing on both teams. And like it seemed like he was going to be like, oh, that'd be ideal, but he kind of stopped himself. And that was really the extent of him kind of shutting down the talks of him coming to the Lakers. So when that's like the case where he like was most insistent on staying in Indiana, that's probably bad for the Pacers.
How uncomfortable do you think Pacers fans were watching that?
Yeah, you know the Key and Peele episode of the guy sweating when his wife is going through a search history. Yeah, probably something similar to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly felt a little bad for him because it's like, I mean, that's their franchise guy being courted by the enemy. In case they forgot, the Lakers beat the Pacers in the 2000 NBA Finals. Shout out to Jalen Rose, who admitted to basically his little dirty play on Kobe. But anyways,
the original Zaza.
Yeah, the original. But no, I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really interesting that he didn't openly say like, "Oh no," because I think he tried at one point to talk about Indiana, and Jimmy Kimmel just kind of cut him off and was like, "No, you don't get to talk about them." So no, it was really interesting, and it's wild to me that there have been so many reports about this. You know, usually I try not to buy too much into players like rumors or buzz about a player that's on another team joining the Lakers because, I mean, we haven't seen it. You know, it hasn't actually happened. But this is, you know, where there's smoke, there's got to be fire, right? Like this is something I haven't really seen before. And, you know, with the social media era, I guess this is what it would have been like for Shaq. I don't know. But I mean, this is pretty crazy. I think, I mean, honey, how confident are you that like he's going to sign with the Lakers next summer?
When it comes to the Lakers, I have no confidence in anything. I was pretty confident they wouldn't give a 4-year, $64 million deal to Timothy Mozgov at midnight last year, midnight on free agency, and here we are. But at the same time, there seems to be like a legitimate case to be made that they'll have an actual shot of getting him, which is more than they could have said about most big time free agents over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think just that enough is pretty appealing, and at least kind of gives them credibility with other free agents too, to say, hey, if you come to the Lakers, there's a good chance that you could be playing with Paul George, who's a legitimate all-star.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the big debate I think right now, and I feel like Lakers fans are starting to be a little more united with it, is whether they should trade for him this summer and just try and get him now, or if they should just be patient and wait. I think we're all three on the same boat with this. I think we'd all three prefer that they just try and wait. I mean, Grant, do you think is there really any kind of scenario that you could see them actually trading for him this summer?
I mean, if they just lowball the crap out of the Pacers and, you know, they somehow accept an offer a la the Pelicans and Sacramento Kings, but I think that they're gonna wait. They're being told to wait by his camp. You know, he wants to play with the young players on our team, and when a player is quote hellbent ×2, shout out to Harrison and Anthony for my favorite phrase on their show.
I'm amazed Anthony has not popped into this podcast yet.
I know, I was just thinking that. But yeah, hellbent ×2 has really become a thing. Like,
yeah.
I'm just, yeah, you got to wait. I mean, a team could trade for him, but even then a report came out that the Lakers are still really confident that they could sign him away from a different team if he's somehow traded in the time between the next offseason.
Yeah, and I think a big concern with people that want to trade for him is they're worried that another team can swoop in and trade for him, and he might like it there and then want to re-sign there. But Hani, I mean, if you're another team, like you're not offering very much for him at this point, are you?
No, I don't think so. And it kind of doesn't sound like the Celtics are probably the one team that most people kind of link to him as a team that should be trading for him, and it just doesn't seem like they're interested at all at this point. And it's kind of been the case over the last couple of years where they haven't been willing to trade any of their assets to get superstar guys to add to their team. So I don't know why that would change when like the guy is saying that he wants to go to your biggest rival
Yeah.
as soon as he's a free agent.
And I don't know who said it. I think it was one of their more prominent front office members that said that they were like their hearts were set on using this pick and not trading it.
I'm pretty sure Danny Ainge said that they want to use the pick, they don't want to trade it, and then their owner literally said if they want to trade it, it better be for the second coming. So unless you think Paul George is the second coming, it sounds like this.
So that was him avoiding tampering by saying we will only trade this pick for LeBron James.
Yes. Or Ivica Zubac.
Oh yeah, of course. Right. But come on, he's not attainable. Come on, get out of here.
Right. They don't have the trade for Marcelo Huertas. He's already created.
No, but like if I'm a GM of another team, I mean, I don't know, maybe Atlanta. Atlanta seems to not care. Like there's been reports that they traded. I think the term or the wordage was more than 3 first-round picks at the deadline for Jimmy Butler, and I guess they reportedly offered 4 first-round picks for Paul George, which would be nuts. But Atlanta seems to be a team that does not want to rebuild. Like they're content being, a kind of a middle-of-the-pack playoff team. So I don't know. I mean, a team can always come in and possibly change things, but I thought it was really interesting that Sam Amick from USA Today, in his report, was saying that Paul George, like the money isn't a huge deal to Paul George. Obviously, he's going to want a max deal. Like, I mean, who wouldn't? But he said that in his report that if Paul George would have made one of the All-NBA teams and been eligible for that $200 million extension, that he wouldn't necessarily have taken it. Like he was going to be really patient with it, and it sounds like from that report that if Indy doesn't become a contender this offseason, it just sounds like he's hell-bent to go to the Lakers, which is, I mean, is crazy to me because of just kind of where they're at right now. But I guess, I mean, maybe a lot of guys want to say, hey, like LeBron's in the Eastern Conference, I don't want to play in the East anymore. So I don't know, but
it's weird to think of somebody coming to the buzzsaw that's Golden State too.
Right. It's like, I mean, either way you go, you're in trouble. But I don't know. I don't really know what to make of all of it right now, because it's like I don't want to get too ahead of myself and think like, oh yeah, he's definitely coming to the Lakers, and then have something change out of the blue. Because I mean, like if you're Indiana, I don't know exactly how they're looking at this situation, because it's a very difficult situation. But I mean, you're watching the Cavaliers just absolutely destroy the Celtics and absolutely destroy the Raptors. Indiana got swept by them, but that was actually a very competitive series. Like all 4 of those games were very, very close. So maybe they kind of view that as like, we're closer than, it looks like, and maybe they're thought, and Miles Turner is going to probably be better next year, but they've got some key free agents that they've got to re-sign. So Laker fans, I would pay close attention to Indiana's offseason. Because I don't know if we should expect a ton from the Lakers in free agency. We were kind of discussing this yesterday, off the air, obviously. But the Lakers have, with these 2 picks, very close to a full roster. With Tarek Black still there, and even if Nick Young doesn't opt out, which I think we all expect him to, if those two were still to be there, the Lakers would be at 14 players. They'd only have room for, one more spot on the roster. So I don't know. I think the Lakers are going to use these 2 picks unless they can trade 28 with one of their bad contracts. But another key part, I think, of Amic's report was that Paul George is very well respected among NBA players, and I think people view him as a guy that can pull other free agents to a team, although it hasn't happened really with Indiana. Grant, do you think that kind of – I know we've been talking about not trading for him, but, I mean, if you truly believe that, does that kind of incentivize you to trade for him a little bit more and have him kind of on your roster already and kind of use him as a selling point next summer?
I'm kind of in the middle with it still because, if he's that committed to becoming a Laker, then, you can wait it out and, get an agreement that he's going to sign, and you can base that off of, you can use that in other free agent meetings and say, hey, Paul George is coming. You can come play with him. So I don't think it, immediately forces you to trade for him. I mean, it'd be nice to have, him on the team already. Mm-hmm. But, if he's as set on becoming a Laker as, everybody thinks he is, I don't think there's any reason to trade for him.
Right. And it's going to be wild from last summer to next summer, because we went from the Lakers' first call was to Timofey Mozgov, and we know their first call is going to be to Paul George next summer. And Hani, I mean, at this point, if you were a free agent, like, are you assuming with all this buzz, say this continues into next summer and Paul George is officially on the market, if you're a free agent and the Lakers clear enough cap space to sign you and Paul George, are you assuming that he's going there? And, like, is that a legitimate recruiting chip that the Lakers could use?
I think so, yeah. There's all these players pretty much talk to each other a lot. So if there's a guy that Paul George wants on the Lakers and the other guy is also interested, then it's already a selling point just between them. The thing I worry about, though, is, like, how much do free agents want to move from team to team, especially going to a team like the Lakers that's just not good right now, when they see the Warriors just destroying everybody or the Cavaliers destroying everybody. Like, sure, you can team up with Paul George, but it just doesn't feel like that's a team that's going to beat the Warriors anytime soon.
Well, when you trade Lonzo Ball for Steph Curry, it's not that much.
Steph Curry's a free agent this summer, so the Lakers obviously have to sign him.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't like Kevin Durant, so he's going to come and sign with the Lakers, and then they can form their own death lineup in LA.
Russell Westbrook's going to pay him half his contract to leave Kevin Durant behind. No, Russell Westbrook's a free agent next summer too, by the way.
Yeah,
and he's also from the LA area. But anyways, that's another podcast. Man, we got tons of podcasts lined up for, like, the next week.
I can talk to LeVar about it.
No, I think it can be used as a recruiting chip, especially, like, if the Lakers call him. They're not going to wait till 9:01 Pacific on the night of June 30th, like the previous, like Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss would have. Lakers will probably be talking to him earlier, but I mean, if you have, like, a handshake agreement already, I mean, maybe. But I think the biggest thing for the Lakers in free agency next summer, their selling point, it's going to be their young players, because, Hani, like you were saying, Paul George isn't enough to beat the Warriors. Like, you're going to need your young players to really start panning out and really developing. And, say D'Angelo Russell makes the leap that we want to see in his third year, and Ingram has a big leap in his second year, and so on and so forth. And, say the Lakers are around 500 this upcoming season with this young group, and then you add in Paul George. It's like, yeah, then maybe you might be able to get another star. But at the same time, if those guys are all starting to look like future star caliber players, is this, is a player going to want to come there saying like, because the Lakers would have, obviously depth is a great thing, but if Russell is kind of your guy, your long-term guy, a star caliber point guard might say like they don't need me, right? So maybe if you get Paul George and your young players are developing, maybe you say, hey, let's spend this money on quality bench players, right? Let's get some guys that can be on good contracts and maybe could be good trade pieces, so on and so forth. And it's interesting, but I am very happy that Magic has been very open about waiting until next year, because when you look at this free agency class, and like I said earlier, we were talking about this yesterday. There's not a lot there for what the Lakers need. Like there's a pretty good amount of power forwards and big guys, but the Lakers don't really need that. Like, I mean, if they were able to sign like a Blake Griffin, then yeah, I think you got to do it. And then you kind of figure out what you do with Randall and Nance and kind of the logjam there. But I mean, I wouldn't expect a ton in free agency this year. And I don't expect the Lakers to trade for Paul George either. And I think we're all in agreement that that's probably the path that they should take. So, but we'll see. We'll see. The next month is going to be fun leading up to the draft, and then we'll see with free agency. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm watching Indiana more closely in free agency, I think, than the Lakers, which feels weird to say. But
it feels like in July we'll probably know what they want to do with their team. Like there's a good chance that they let everybody walk and say we're either trading Paul George by the deadline or just we're letting them walk. Yeah,
I mean, if you're sitting there and you're the GM of the Pacers right now, Grant, I'll throw this to both you guys, but Grant, I'll throw it to you first. I mean, if you're the GM of the Pacers, how are you handling this situation? Are you trying to trade him now? Are you waiting until the deadline? Are you just going to roll the dice and assume, he makes an All-NBA team next year, which allows you to give him that $200 million contract? Like, what do you do?
I think if I'm the GM, I wait till the deadline and then see who's calling, because you got to get some kind of return on him. I think Indiana's leverage is really low, so you kind of work to, kind of build that up throughout the start of the season, and then come the trade deadline, that's when you start to receive more calls and you can drive up the price a little more. And then you can hope to make a deal, because you're going to want a return. You're not going to let them walk and then just be left without any assets or any building blocks.
Yeah, and you mentioned, excuse me, their leverage, and it's only going to get worse and worse, as the deadline approaches, right? So, I mean, Hani, doesn't that kind of incentivize them a little bit to trade him this summer, or do you think like, their thought process is, we've got cap space, we've got Miles Turner developing, we've got a first round pick we can use. You think they're thinking we got to give everything that we have towards this offseason?
Yeah, as far as I've seen, with Pacers fans as well, pretty much the ones that I interact with a little bit all seem like they're pretty intent on moving Paul George pretty quickly. I don't think anybody is too confident that he's going to re-sign with them. And as I said, from a leverage perspective, it makes more sense to do it this summer, and whichever team gets him for a full year at least, and has that chance to sell him on re-signing with them. So from that perspective, yeah, I think theoretically you could get more for him this summer than you could at the deadline, because we saw what happened with DeMarcus Cousins, who still had another year on his deal, and
right.
Kings got next to nothing for him.
Excuse me, I've just
You're there.
I'm gonna have to really edit this out, but it's such a complicated situation, but it's gonna be very, very entertaining. So I'm looking forward to it as, not a Pacers fan. That'll be fun. But no, I mean, anything you guys want to add before we sign off here?
Just gonna say we should draft Cameron Oliver at some point. If it's the number 2 pick, I'm all for it.
In some facet, get Cameron Oliver on the Lakers.
Hey, if somebody drafts him before we can draft him at 28, you can trade D'Angelo Russell for him. It doesn't matter.
Probably just sign him as an undrafted free agent.
Maybe if he was somebody from wherever school that you're a fan of.
Jokes on you. I don't have a favorite college basketball team.
I just figured he'd say Boise State, but hey.
I mean, Boise State doesn't give undrafted free agents either, so.
I don't know. You won't hear me talking about Boise State and NBA draft prospects. We had
who's the last Boise State guy to be in the NBA? Honestly,
Kobe Carl probably.
Oh, okay.
James Webb III is in the D League, I think, or the G League. I think that's what it's going to be now. And he was on the Sixers summer
league. Snoop Dogg running it.
They did have Chandler Hutchison declare for the draft, but he withdrew his name already. So, it's not pretty. It's a lot different in the NFL. But no, I mean, there's going to be plenty to talk about leading up to the draft on June 22nd. Like I said, I'm excited for the Pacers offseason. That might be really mean of me, but I'm excited to see how that all unfolds because it's going to be – I mean, it's different than the DeMarcus Cousins situation a little bit because I think teams actually want Paul George. I know a lot of GMs didn't really want DeMarcus Cousins because of his antics and stuff like that, but we'll see. It'll be fun. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and sign off here before I cough up a lung. This water really backfired on me, but we figured out the iTunes situation. I just want to announce that so subscribe to us on iTunes. You can subscribe to us on YouTube as well. That's where obviously we film all of these live. The iTunes will be the edited versions and things like that. You won't hear me coughing so much in this one, but so yeah, you can subscribe to both of those. All the podcasts will also be on Podbean. You can follow us on Twitter at Lakers Outsiders, Instagram at Lakers Outsiders, and like us on Facebook. Just search Lakers Outsiders and we'll pop up there. So Grant Goldberg, you can follow him at Grant Goldberg. Hani Ahmadian, you can follow at HONIAHM, and then me at Gary Kester. It's going to do it for us this time. Grant, Hani, thank you guys so much for joining me. Hoping to have another podcast up this weekend. Maybe we'll talk about a certain prospect's father. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But we got plenty to talk about. Thank you all for following along live with us. Thank you for your comments. We love the feedback, and thank you to those that are listening to us on iTunes. So we're going to sign off tonight, and we will see you guys next time.